Michael. For time's sake, I wanted to tell you that Edythe wrote in hand 52 pages on a steno pad, 3 different colors, a pen, of her memoirs at Antioch, and I think I cannot do justice rushing through it. So I'd like to kind of open up with a little bit of what she has said, and then we'll give a citation, and then I think our Turo is here, her son, who will do the acceptance speech. So, all right. Antioch, a memoir. Going to Antioch was the best thing that could have happened to me. I say this in retrospect, of course. The honor system giving students responsibility for their behavior and actions fostered maturity at an early age. At Antioch, when I was there, their system really worked. Cut the music. Antioch had a highly selected student body which represented the entire U.S., although I think the majority of its students may have come from the Northeast, highly populated areas. Antiochians were bright and highly motivated, and they were a special breed. The pace of study periods was rapid. I arrived on campus a few days early carrying an infection that came from a tooth extraction. I was put in the infirmary where I remained until the first meeting of all incoming freshmen. This was June 1943. The summer session that lasted 12 weeks. Yeah. I left the infirmary for the first time to attend a 6 o'clock meeting for freshmen. I had not seen any of the person who attended, students, faculty, or staff, and when I walked into the room, no one seemed to notice that, and that was okay. During the session, each student stood up and introduced him and herself and giving their nicknames. So I decided when introducing myself, I would give myself a nickname, which was Scotty. Turned out that was the name I was called by everyone at Antioch while in attendance there and for many years beyond, even to this day. During the break, a lovely girl came up to me and informed me that we had been assigned roommates. She gave me our room number in North Hall, which was the freshman girls' dorm, and later entered her room and noticed that my trunk had already been placed there, and this girl, my roommate, was the protege of Professor C.D. Stevens, affectionately called Steve by all the students. He had taught at Hampton Institute in Virginia along with my roommate's parents for a number of years. Hampton was a historical black college founded by the American Mission Association following the Civil War. And this organization and a number of colleges and a few high schools for blacks whose faculties were white but later integrated when black teachers became available. My school in Marion, Alabama had been an AMA school. Whereas my roommate was sweet, soft, and naive person, a girl who was tough and manipulative, soon began hanging out in our dorm room. She had come from some southern state and was obviously racist. She never attempted to be friendly towards me, and I often caught her staring at me when she thought I wasn't looking. Somehow my first roommate and I never became friends. During that summer, college brought in ASTP, which was the World War II Veterans Unit, to the campus, and the cadets took over the freshman girls' dormitory. We were moved to another building near the edge of campus, and by this time I guess our dorm counselors had noticed that I was an outsider and decided to take action. 3 Jewish girls who had been assigned roommates or had decided to live together invited me to join them. I did. This arrangement worked out well. In fact, one of these persons became a friend with whom I corresponded for a long time after leaving Antioch. Unfortunately, shortly after arriving at Antioch, I found a surrogate mother in Yellow Springs, an African-American woman who worked in housekeeping in the freshman girls' dormitory and bore a striking resemblance to my mother and took a strong interest in me. In my second weekend as a dormitory student, she invited me to spend that weekend with her, and right away I felt comfortable in her well-kept home. And before long, she and her husband had adopted me. They did the same for Coretta when she came along 2 years later. But Lawson's home became our home away from home, and Mrs. Lawson's role as a mentor and godmother lasted until her death. During that summer session, the experience which always stands out for me was the writing course. So it's another note. I took it with Dorothy Paul Smith, college editor, who assisted in Walter Anderson's work. So there's so many parallels there. The class was small. We wrote a paper every week on a topic chosen by the instructor, and for example, a paper was a book review, and after making corrections, Mrs. Smith spent 1 hour with us pointing out weaknesses in each paper, explaining her corrections and her reasons for making them, and this lady taught me how to write. This was the only course I took in writing mechanics while in college. But from that summer onwards, my professors often commented favorably on my writing. The summer ended with a party for the girls living in my dorm. The committee had planned the party, promised to find dates for all of us. I wondered how this would turn out for me. But on the evening of the party, a handsome upper-class fellow appeared at her dorm saying he was to be my escort. And I don't remember much else about the party. I do remember, however, that I was pleasantly surprised at having such an exciting gentleman for a date. I grew up bent on having a career. Getting married and having a family would fit into the larger picture, so I'm not pushy as far as men were concerned. And on the evening of the party, my escort kept the conversation going. He was a pre-med major, spending a lot of time in labs. And after that date, I was in close contact with this man only once, some years later. Her favorite spot is this part right here. It was a Sunday afternoon. We happened to have sat together at dinner in the tea room. Much to my surprise, when the dinner was over, he asked me if I'd be interested in attending a Vic concert. I guess it was Victrola? Yeah? Okay. These concerts took place after dark on the main campus in front of the main building. Classical music would be playing, seemingly coming from the towers. Students would lay on the blankets, spread over the grass, listen, and it was a delightful experience in the fresh air on a warm summer evening. My main problem with this gentleman was that I thought he was more advanced, more sophisticated than I, and for these reasons I could never warm up to him. And during the concert, he spent a lot of time talking about classical music, composers, their work. Through this piece was not played that evening. Though this piece was not played that evening, his conversation introduced me to Walt Disney's Fantasia, which I knew nothing about at the time. And when I did see the film and how it had been, I appreciated it all the more due to the introduction my date on that particular evening had given me. Because Lincoln High School was a strong music program, but I enrolled at Antioch, music was my stronger area. The Antioch Community Center learned, or perhaps remember that as a junior I came to Antioch with the high school choir, and music was the area in which I stood out. During that first summer at Antioch, I joined the college choir, which prepared for the end of the study period. And on that Sunday afternoon at that concert, somehow at the last minute, I decided to stay in my room in bed rather than attend the concert. Somehow my feelings of being the only Negro at a white college took over. And after the concert, Mrs. Lawson came by my room, found me in bed. I didn't attempt to explain my actions, and she chose not to ask questions. In fact, she never ever mentioned the incident. This was the beginning of my strange actions or reactions due to feelings of being different. And all that at this fact implied at that time in our society when Negroes were treated as second-class citizens. And apparently some other persons also noticed that I had not attended the summer choir concert and decided to try to help, although no one ever mentioned my absence, not even the director. Professor Waldo Beach taught ethics and was a minister organized a group which he called the Madrigal Singers. The two students in the group were highly trained singers, upperclassmen who were soloists in the college choir, and the two other persons were Esther Olds, who worked as one of the directors of the co-op program, but who had been trained for concerts day and had a lovely cultural voice. The other faculty person was a chemistry professor and a trained singer. He was a tenor, and Professor Beach, the director, was a baritone, like John Ingram, a male student. This was distinguished company. They invited me to join them, and I did, and I felt comfortable with this group and challenged. At the next concert, the Madrigal Singers had a prominent spot on the program, and I was a member of that group. In the fall of 1943, two other African-American girls enrolled at Antioch, Nina Hamilton from Yellow Springs and Mildred Keller from nearby Springfield. Both girls were bright and attractive. Nina had graduated from Bryan High, which is in Yellow Springs, from local high school, and as valedictorian of her class, earning a scholarship which she could use at any college of her choice. She had chosen Antioch. Mildred had a scholarship, but I never knew the source. Because I was on a different level, my friendship with those girls remained casual. Bonding requires time spent together and finding common interests. 2 years later, three other African-American students joined Antioch's student body. One of these persons was my sister Coretta. The other was Leon Higginbotham and Jean Foster, who both matriculated from the state of New Jersey. Before enrolling at Antioch, Leon had spent 1 year at Purdue University in Indiana for 1 year when he was not able to live in the dormitory with whites. At Purdue, blacks had their own living quarters, and the following year, Lonnie McDonald from Chester, Pennsylvania came, and some other blacks came. From the beginning, the groups who came to Antioch after 1943 became more integrated into the student body than the first three of us had been. And for example, mixed dating became a fact. Coretta had a long, serious relationship with a young man from Wheeling, West Virginia. Lonnie McDonald almost married a Cajun girl, and at the last minute, his parents broke up the relationship. Both Leon and Lonnie made expediting records for themselves at Antioch and became strong leaders. And while at Antioch, Leon even served as community manager for a specified period, and Lonnie, upon graduation from Antioch, was admitted to 5 medical schools at a time, and the size of the veteran population made it difficult to get admitted to one. And then later, Leon became a senior judge in the U.S. Court of Appeals, 3rd District. Third Circuit. Lonnie developed the first department of psychiatry at a Harvard hospital. Antioch's co-op plans to study and work on and off campus worked when I was there. It was one of the unique features of an Antioch education. I held 2 co-op jobs in New York, 2 in Chicago, 1 in Cleveland. And in one of my jobs in Chicago, she met Richard Wright. Mr. Wright was a visiting director at the time, and he was an old friend of Horace Clayton. Working on different jobs in different places also gave students the opportunity early on to experiment, to grow, to find themselves personally and on the job. Moreover, the co-op plan gave students an opportunity to make lifelong contacts. When I was working as a clerk at Cleveland Urban League, I lived in a student house co-op. One of the students was Simeon Booker, who worked for the Cleveland Call Post. And many years later, Simeon was working for Jet Magazine and attended Martin's funeral. Yes, and Antioch education fostered experience in many ways. From my Antioch days, no faculty members really stands out. They were unusual, each in their own way, and they all seemed ahead of their time. Preparing students for constructive social change, a society in which racial equality and social justice would prevail. Living in the beloved community which Martin and Coretta envisioned. And I often said it was impossible to graduate from Antioch without having developed a social conscience. I remember a class in social psychology in which the professor told our students, "You're all racists." Protesting vigorously, they all insisted they were not. This was in the mid-40s when American society was strictly segregated, even beyond public services. And at some point, the professor explained that since they had been born in a racist society and the fact that their value systems had been set by the time they were 3 years of age, they were racist, maybe without realizing it. In a class in genetics, another professor chose to do it with the race question. He explained that since the vast majority of African Americans carried recessive white genes, 2 brown-skinned persons could have a white child. And later I saw this happen. 2 of my brown-skinned colleagues became parents of a baby girl who was born with light skin, blue eyes, and blonde, kinky hair. I've cited the foregoing examples of teaching at Antioch in order to show how professors there during my time worked and taught in the forefront of change. And there was, however, one person who worked in administration who saved me at Antioch, and that person was Jessie Piper. Administrative assistant to President Aldo D. Henderson and later director of the Office of Development, this lady had a sharp mind and a tender heart. She was a rare combination of the dreamer and performer. She would get the job done. Coretta said many times that woman and Walter Anderson kept me at Antioch. Jessie Trico mentored the 2 of us until the end of her days. After retirement and following Martin's death, Jessie went down to Atlanta and worked in Coretta's office for a while. She made a huge impact on both of our lives. And in this discourse, I've chosen not to discuss the reasons why I left before graduating Antioch. That would be a long topic in itself, and I couldn't get it out of her. Not yet. It requires a long time and many years to understand life's strongest, most profound challenges. I choose to learn from the living, and at the age of 85, I feel was the wise thing to do. In summation, Coretta often said that only Antioch could have prepared her for the life she was destined to lead. I agree wholeheartedly with Coretta's statement. It is my firm belief that my going to Antioch was providential. It was meant to be. I have said many times, I didn't choose Antioch, Antioch chose me. Had I not gone to Antioch, I doubt Coretta would have found me her way there, and if she had not chosen to attend Antioch, I wonder if, at the time, she would have ended up in Boston, where she met and married Martin Luther King. The rest is recorded history.